Okay. Hi, French Tech Indonesia. Welcome to this new episode of Lunch and Learn. My name is Reza Pirnazar, co-president of La French Tech Indonesia Jakarta chapter, and I will be your host today. To start, let me introduce a bit about La French Tech. La French Tech is a non-profit organization that gathers 68 communities in 50 countries around the world. In Indonesia, we are more than 200 like-minded entrepreneurs, investors, and talents. Our mission is to build an inclusive community to foster the French entrepreneurial footprints in the region and the Indonesian tech ecosystem. We envision La French Tech Indonesia to be the go-to hub for entrepreneurs, investors, and other tech startup actors in Indonesia. We organize on a regular basis this lunch and learn, networking meetups, pitch and play, and our annual tech summit. By the way, our next summit is coming on the 10th of October. If you are not already a member of our network, just go to frenchtech.id and join our network. We will add all the links in the comment section. This being said, let's go to what brings us all here today. Lunch and Learn Season 2, Episode 7 by La French Tech Indonesia. Indonesian Solar Photovoltaic Market, a key toward energy transition between opportunities and challenge. Our speaker today, Julien Duchaine, is a multidisciplinary consultant with 15 years of international experience, spending a decade in Indonesia, specializing in solar photovoltaic projects, development, and diverse engineering disciplines related to construction. He has successfully delivered multifaceted projects for various clients and sectors in France, Indonesia, and Malaysia. Driven by his passion for sustainable development and technologies, he has navigated in both global and Indonesian landscape, offering a wide range of technical expertise and on-ground insight into the opportunities and challenges of solar energy in Indonesia. In this session, you will learn how solar photovoltaic could play a key role in achieving Indonesian energy transition and net zero emissions target. We will look at the opportunities that open solar photovoltaic in Indonesia and look at the challenges hindering its quick development. Julien, the stage is yours.
Hello, everyone. Reza, thank you for the quick introduction. It's a great pleasure to be participating to this session and to introduce you a bit more about the PV solar in Indonesia and to discuss about this market. So before to dive into the Indonesian market, let's have a quick look at the global market to understand where is positioned Indonesia compared to it. So currently, solar PV market is booming worldwide. This year, 2023, solar PV has become the fastest growing energy source around the world, and it's really start to make an important role in the energy transition. So we have to look at as well the multiple benefits of solar PV. So the first one is like since a couple of years, solar PV is becoming one of the cheapest energy compared to other energy sources. It helps to decarbonize the energy mix in most of the countries. As well, it helps on for the countries to be less dependent of importing other energy sources. Its construction brings a lot of jobs. As well, it's relatively easy to implement and the scalability is quite easy to achieve. And as well, it's relatively low maintenance compared to other energy sources. So currently, we are seeing an acceleration, especially since 2018, where investment in clean energy overtook for the first time investment in fossil fuels. And it has even further accelerated since the global energy crisis that we are experiencing. To give you some ideas of numbers, this year we are expecting $1.7 trillion global investment in clean energy compared to $1 trillion in fossil fuels. And this is mainly driven by the solar PV market, that have seen this year, so between 2022 and 2023, a growth of 43%. And in terms of total capacity, it's around 1.2 terawatts of installed capacity worldwide. So while we are seeing like an increase of growth currently, we are expecting to have less global energy crisis, and it might reduce a bit the growth of the market, but we are still expecting between 15 to 20% growth until 2030 annually. So this market is mainly led by China. On the first part, by the installed capacity, their share is around 40% of the world PV installed capacity. And they are by far the main manufacturing hub with 80% of shares on solar panels manufacturing, but they are as well leading on other key components like inverters and mounting structures. So China is really driving the market, especially due to strong policies from the Chinese government, who is pushing to go as fast as possible toward net zero emission for their country. As well, they have put massive investments in manufacturing facilities, which is really like driving this market for China. Now that we have seen some key numbers about the global market, let's dive more into the Indonesian market. Let's see where we are at, what is expecting, what are the opportunities and challenges on this market. Firstly, let's try to put things into perspective. So Indonesia is the fourth largest country in the world, the seventh largest greenhouse gas emitter, but is ranking really far behind in terms of solar capacity. They have a lot of sun, a lot of demand, but they are like a ranking only at the 72nd place worldwide. They are really far behind what it could be. Give you an idea of what is installed in the country. So they have only 200 megawatts compared to 1.2 terawatt worldwide. This is around just 0.2% of the total world capacity installed. Even if the potential is estimated to 200 gigawatts in the country, we have this 1,000% factor to fill between what we have now and what we could expect in the country. So despite this potential and the ambitions, Indonesia is actually facing some policy uncertainties that is affecting the speed of energy transition and the growth of the solar PV market. So let's look first at the positive factors on this market. Solar PV market has become mature worldwide. Its price has decreased a lot. Electricity from solar is competitive in most of the cases. As well, the public is more and more aware of the climate crisis, and as well about this need for shifting energy sources toward more renewable energies. On the government, policies and regulations are already in place. They have passed a bill in 2021 about the electricity programmation plan that is planning to have around 25% of renewable energy in the mix by 2030. Solar account for 4.7% of this plan. As well, in 2021, the government put in place a regulation about solar rooftop, which has helped to increase the market to kick up. Also, the government has pledged to go toward net zero emission by 2060. There is as well a topic that we'll go a bit more into detail later. PLN is actually trying to renegotiate contracts with the coal power plants that will give more room for solar PV and other renewable energy. And as well, Indonesia is trying to put itself as a main hub for solar manufacturing. They have just signed a massive deal to build a solar panel manufacturing in Batam a couple of months ago. So we are expecting to see the first large-scale manufacturing in the next coming years. As well, there is more and more international support. It's between support and pressure over the government here. One initiative that has been signed during the G20 in Bali last year was a Just Energy Transition Partnership, which will be helping Indonesia to do early retirements of the oldest coal power plants and the most polluting ones. As well, it's going to bring some finance to support the country in their energy transition. An important point as well is like many multinationals who have factories and supply chain in Indonesia have pledged during the Paris Agreement to go toward net zero emission. So we see a lot of actions being done by these multinationals on the local level to implement renewable energy, solar, to implement energy efficiency solutions. So this one is driving a lot of growth on the market as well. And Indonesia have pledged during a couple of international events like the Paris Agreement, the COP26, the G20 in Bali, and the ASEAN forum that happened in Jakarta a couple of weeks ago. Despite all these positive signs, we are facing some uncertainties that are a bit slowing down the growth of the market. The first of all, the energy programmation plan is already experiencing some delays in its application, and it lacks of clarity on some parts. For the regulation on the solar rooftop, PLN has pushed back as well last year, so it's slowing down as well this transition. And we are already seeing some delays in the implementation of the early retirement program of the coal power plants. And actually, all these challenges are mainly due to the PLN overcapacity, where actually, especially in the Great Java Bali, there is too many coal power plants. And the contracts made between the coal power plants and the PLN was take or pay agreement, which means like PLN has to pay any electricity purchased, even if it's at loss and even if it's not reflecting the real demand. Due to that, the government has to subsidize a lot the electricity, which is artificially making the electricity much cheaper than it should be here, and making coal electricity still competitive compared to solar energy. As well, Indonesia, especially in Java, we have commissioned a couple of coal power plants, and some are still under construction and should be commissioned relatively soon this year or next year. On the positive side, PLN already has cut some contracts, some power purchase agreements before starting construction of coal power plants. So it's limiting a bit the new capacity of coal power plants. So all these challenges are actually making financing, especially from international lenders, more difficult to build these solar power plants. So now that we have seen opportunities and challenges, let's go through the different segments that we have in the solar market. So one is the utility scale solar. The other one will be more distributed solar, rooftop. And the next one will be remote and off-grid solar. So the utility scale solar is mainly ground-mounted and floating solar projects above 1 megawatt peak. In this case, the electricity is sold directly to the utility, like PLN or other private utility, through power purchase agreements, and power plants are owned by independent power producers. In this case, the electricity is fed to the grid, then transmitted and distributed until the end users. So in terms of capacity already installed on utility scale, we are only at 77 megawatt peak by end of last year. Currently, there is around 600 megawatt of utility scale projects, especially floating solar, including one in Cirata Lake, north of Bandung, which is around 145 megawatt peak. This is one of the largest floating solar projects in the world, and it should be operating by end of this year. As well, the target of the government on utility scale is around 2.8 gigawatt peak. to be operational by 2025. Unfortunately, we see already some delays on this implementation. Another actually side project, which is quite big, is this September, Indonesia and Singapore signed an export deal for Indonesia to produce solar energy, especially in Batam area on floating projects to send and sell electricity to Singapore. So on these markets, the main challenges are actually a lack of clarity on the auction schedule. There is a plan in the programmation plan from the government, but unfortunately, its execution is not really following this plan. As well, the bidding process is not really transparent. Another point, these large-scale projects are relatively expensive to pre-develop, and this is quite lengthy. And an important point to consider is like most of the power purchase agreements from the government, from PLN, are not considered bankable by international lenders. The second segment, the distributed solar, it's mainly rooftop projects where the power plant is installed near or at the end user's location. In this segment, we see two main schemes. One is a CapEx scheme where actually the end user will pay an installer to build the plant on the roof. Then the end user will use directly the energy at their own cost. The other one that is used widely at the moment on commercial and industrial is OPEX, where the end user is actually paying a third party to install and operate the solar plant on the roof. Then they are paying electricity at discounted price compared to PLN. This segment is supported by the rooftop regulation from 2021. As well, these kind of projects are much faster to implement compared to utility scale. And there is a large potential, especially on commercial and industrial, where we have a lot of factories in the country. Some other markets are the residential and the government and social buildings, which is much smaller size compared to this commercial and industrial. Now here we are facing some challenges because PLN pushed back on the regulation and imposed reduced capacity. Before we could install 100% of the PLN size. Now they are reducing to 10 to 15%. Pause a lot of projects, but on industrial area, we still can easily install large megawatt projects as their load usually is really important. As well, users are often experiencing some difficulties to obtain their net metering with PLN. Therefore, like some projects are running on self-consumption and not dealing with PLN. Now let's see the last segment, which is a bit more niche market. So this is a remote and off-grid market. It is mainly insulated project on off-grid and mini-grids from 10 to 10 megawatts. Most of them are using battery. Sometimes they are using hybrid with diesel as well. The opportunity here is like the government is planning to replace mini diesel generator in the country for around 500 megawatts by hybrid solar battery gensets. As well, we have some smaller markets in this segment, like the rural areas, the electrification of some areas, and except that the current electrification rate in Indonesia is 99%, so it's really limiting the number of places where we can install these electrification projects. And as well, some specific usage like telecommunication towers and solar pumping. Now on this market, the main challenge is funding access. The upfront cost is much higher compared to diesel. Often we have logistic challenges. These projects are in remote areas with difficult access, no port, no proper roads. as well, the maintenance can be challenging because we don't have skilled people in these areas in case of important maintenance. And the last point is it's much harder to size this project because it really depends on the demand of each project. So we either oversize or undersize easily the projects. So here are the three segments of the solar market. And to conclude, we can see that this is a promising market with a massive untapped potential in the country. Policies and regulations are already in place, but we have to overcome some challenges, and we hope we'll see a much faster growth in the solar PV market relatively soon. And anyway, I think we should not wait, and we should try to do everything to push toward this energy transition in this country, which really needs it, especially in terms of shifting from coal to other more green energy sources. Thank you, everyone. Now, if you have any questions, just let me know.
Thank you, Julien.
Thank you.
A great presentation. Now I understand a little bit more about the solar energy and its implication in Indonesia. Is there anybody who has any questions?
Yeah, I have.
Hi, Rez, please.
Hello, Julien. You didn't speak about it, but I think for us, we are not totally into this market yet. But we hear a lot about the effectiveness of PV and solar in Indonesia because of the cloud, because of the weather. So if you can just explain a little bit what's the differences, what's the real potential of Indonesia because of the weather here, if there's a comparison for India or China, for example, if there are differences, because some people say it's relevant, some people say it's not relevant, as much as I heard.
So it depends how we look at it. If we look at it for having renewable energy, so let's say 5 to 10% of solar energy in the grid, this doesn't have any impact. It's this variation of having cloudy and sunny time doesn't have a big impact on the grid. The grid can take these fast changes. After, if we speak about smaller projects, like off-grid, this is increasing the size of the batteries. And if we speak about larger grid where we install above 10, let's say more like 20% of renewable energy, actually it's not just solar, but all type of renewable energy. When you start to have a relatively large size, we need to put in place alternatives on the grid to anticipate this sudden change on energy production from solar due to clouds or bad weather.
In percent, how much of the year is it's a good time to make an energy from solar, from PV in Indonesia?
Actually, the sun hours in Indonesia is relatively constant. There is no big variation like you can see in China or in Europe. So we are around 4 hours in general over the years. There is a fluctuation of plus minus 10% throughout the year, depending on the month. Compared to Europe, for example, if you take Europe, it's nearly double compared to winter and summer.
Merci.
Welcome.
We have Ario who raised his hand. Ario, you have a question?
Sure, thank you. First, I'd like to appreciate the FTI for hosting the events, and also thank you, Julien, for the very exciting presentation. So my question is, but before the questions, I have some context. Recently, Indonesia just launched the carbon market, right? In the IDX. And from what I understood, I spoke with some people, and one of the reason why they install PV for their solar system for their energy production is regarding their scope 2 emissions. Nowadays, with the launch of the carbon market, which the price is very cheap, which what I read in the news, it was only less than 70,000 for each CO2 redemptions or the carbon offset. So my question is, from your point of view, do you think there is a change in the potential upsides of the PV or solar implementations in Indonesia from the implementations or the launch of the carbon market? Thank you.
Currently, Indonesia tried to launch their carbon market a couple of years ago, and it failed. People are already saying like the new carbon market, the price is too low. Honestly, I don't know how it's gonna be implemented. If it's gonna have a positive impact, what is sure it should increase a little bit, like the efficiency and the return on these projects. But to which scale, I don't really know. So I think it's better just to wait and see like what this freshly new carbon market will do to renewable energy market in Indonesia.
Merci.
We have Raphael who has a question.
Yep. Hi, Julien.
Very
nice
nice.
Thank you. It's very informative. I had a question about the electricity subsidies. So we often hear about the fact that Indonesia has a lot of coal and they export a lot of coal, and then there's domestic market obligations forcing coal companies to sell the coal at below market prices to PLN. So I understand that from a PLN point of view, they buy cheap coal and they have too much electricity, so they're not interested in solar. That's fair. But at a government point of view, you could make the case that if you produce less coal through producing more solar electricity, if you need less coal, for your domestic electricity consumption, you can export more coal, and then that's more revenue for the state of Indonesia. So am I reading this right? Is there just kind of a discrepancy of alignment between the state as a whole and PLN in particular, or is there something else there?
Well, what is sure, there is a lot of lobbying playing in the back. I mean, as well on the coal industry, what might help actually to shift from coal on the electricity generation on the main grid is Indonesia found usage for coal, massive usage in the nickel manufacturing in Sulawesi. So even if they reduce like their usage of coal to produce electricity on their main grids, they unfortunately on one side found a lot of new users on the nickel manufacturing. And actually Indonesia is trying to push back on the definition of green investments and trying to put coal for nickel manufacturing for batteries as kind of being green. So it looks like it might help on one side, but shift that on another side.
Okay. But from a government budget point of view, imagine that there is more production of electricity through solar, therefore less domestic consumption of coal, therefore more exports of coal, which means more export duties. Isn't this better for the government as a whole? I mean, what am I missing here?
But the first point you said before, like coal is sold at cost. That I'm not really sure. Maybe I'm totally wrong on this one. But what is sure is like, on one side they have to pay for electricity that is not consumed in areas, and the other side is like price of electricity is more or less the same all around Indonesia. So in some areas it's really expensive to make electricity. And this is an additional loss on their budget. So I'm not really sure like reducing the coal plant will give them like more benefits. It's like it's a lot of regulations to change on top of the government. It's relatively tricky. Yeah, we need to look at it at the global on the global Indonesian level. So because most of the time, if you take for example Java, it's really cheap to produce with coal. And another point that actually we need to that I didn't discuss is like the profits are not put on PLN; they are put on the independent power producer. So they shift the profit on on IPVs.
I see. Interesting. All right. Thank you.
Welcome.
So we have a question on the chat box from Gabriel. Have you worked on hydroelectricity and or geothermal energy projects?
Myself, no. I've worked with a couple of people who were doing hydro projects here. Small hydro from 1 to 10 megawatt. So I'm not so familiar with this market. Yeah.
Okay. I have a very practical question. How much it costs to install a photovoltaic solar system in a I don't know if it's by square meter or if it's how does it work, and is it expensive to do it? How much it costs?
So we have to look at it from the different segments. So if we take each segment, let's say the utility scale, we are around below $1 per watt peak of installed capacity. To give you a reference, 1 square meter is so this is all usually we count the size and the cost of a solar plant. So that's on the cost for utility scale. No, like distributed projects or rooftop projects. Scale, let's say we are between $1 and $2 per watt peak, depending on the size, the complexity of the project. And large scale, around 1 megawatt, we are below $1 per watt peak. And the last one on off-grid is a bit challenging to give you a price because it's really like based on each project. But you can count around between $2 and $4 per watt peak. The main cost will be actually the battery. So if we don't have too much battery, we will be close to $2. And if we are full battery without any backup, we are more around $4.
Okay, so not having battery means whatever you produce is directly consumed, right?
Correct.
I mean,
exactly.
You cannot keep the electricity and use it at night or something like that. So everything that you consume. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, that's why if you have like a small PV capacity in a grid, the grid is considered as a battery actually. It just goes in it and exchange.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Welcome.
Is there any other questions? No more questions? Okay. Julien, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining us for this Lunch and Learn Season 2, Episode 7, I think. This episode will be online in a few days on our YouTube channel. So if you want to replay it, don't hesitate. And thank you everybody for joining this session, taking your time on your off day, because here in Indonesia today is off, and thank you for taking the time. So everybody, I give you I don't know, rendezvous, as we say in French. In 2 weeks we have our next session, and in 2 weeks we also have our French Tech AI Summit, which will take place in Jakarta on the 10th of October. So if you want to join us there, please head to our website FrenchTech.id and subscribe. If you are watching this video after 10th of October 2023, you will also have the replay online. Okay, thank you everybody. Thank you so much, Julien. Thank you everybody. Have a good day.
Thank you everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.